The lights in the studio dimmed. Jasmine Crockett sat still, her hands folded. Across from her, Vice President J.D. Vance had just finished a fiery rant, his voice sharp, face flushed. "She's not qualified to be here," he barked. "She talks emotion, not facts. This is why we can't move the country forward." Gasps echoed through the audience. The moderator tried to steer the conversation away, but Jasmine didn't move. Then, softly, calmly, she spoke. "Before we move on, can I ask the production team to play one clip? Just one." J.D. Vance frowned. The giant screen behind them lit up. A hidden camera, a donor dinner, J.D. Vance laughing. "These folks eat that working-class hero nonsense up," he said. "You tell them what they want to hear, and they'll vote for anything in a red tie." The audience fell silent. Jasmine didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She turned her head slowly, looked at him, and asked, quietly but clearly, "So which version of you should America believe?" J.D. Vance's face turned pale, but the real story behind this moment started long before that night, and it started with pain. What made Jasmine stay silent for so long? 3 months earlier, Jasmine sat alone in her office at 10:23 p.m. The Capitol was nearly empty. Her staff had gone home. The halls were quiet. But she couldn't stop replaying the email she'd received that morning. Anonymous, short, terrifying. "He's lying to them. I have proof. Don't trust a word he says." Attached was a blurry clip. J.D. Vance at a private fundraiser, mocking voters, flipping positions, laughing about emotional black women in Congress. Jasmine stared at the screen, stunned. She had suspected hypocrisy. But this was betrayal at the highest level. She saved the clip, but told no one. Not yet. Not because she was afraid, but because she knew that if she moved too soon, it would be dismissed as emotional outrage, just like he always accused her of being. So she waited. She studied, and she built her case. But something happened that almost made her walk away from everything. A betrayal not from a rival, but from someone she once trusted deeply. It was 2:11 a.m. when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. It was Thomas, her old law professor, mentor, and once the only person who truly believed in her. She smiled faintly before picking up, but his voice wasn't warm. "Jasmine, I need to talk to you about the clip." Her heart dropped. "How do you even know about it?" He hesitated. "JD's team is panicking. They know something leaked. They think it came from you. Look, I've been offered a position advising the Senate Judiciary next term. I can't be involved if you go public with this." She froze. "You're siding with him." "I'm choosing my future," he said quietly. "Don't blow yours chasing ghosts." The line went dead. Jasmine sat in silence, not because she didn't know what to say, but because she realized something brutal. Even the people who claim to believe in truth will abandon it when it costs them power. Tears welled in her eyes, but her fire was only beginning. 2 weeks after the call, Jasmine sat in the back of a quiet church on the east side of Dallas. No cameras, no makeup, just her and the silence. She didn't come to pray. Not exactly. She came to remember who she was, before Congress, before sound bites, before the pressure to prove herself to rooms that never wanted her there. An older woman sat beside her, worn hands, a face like stone. "You look tired, baby," the woman said gently. Jasmine nodded, eyes low. "Don't let them turn your silence into weakness," the woman added. "Sometimes, silence is just a fist waiting to close." That line stayed with her. She didn't know who the woman was. But in that moment, Jasmine felt seen, not as a politician, but as a human being holding pain and truth and fire in her chest. That night, Jasmine opened her laptop and rewatched the clip. She didn't flinch this time. Because the woman in the pew was right. She wasn't done. She was just beginning to rise. 3 days later, Jasmine received a text from a former staffer she hadn't spoken to in over a year. "He knows you have the clip. They're trying to dig up dirt. Be careful." She stared at the screen. Another came minutes later. This one with a link. An article was scheduled to drop the next morning. Crockett's college controversy, a pattern of reckless behavior. She laughed at first. The controversy was a decade-old misunderstanding about a protest she helped organize, one that got her suspended for standing up against a racist professor. But they weren't after truth. They were after blood. By evening, trolls flooded her inbox. Her family was getting calls. Someone even parked outside her mother's house and didn't get out of the car for 2 hours. That night, Jasmine stood in her kitchen, her hands shaking as she poured tea. Was it worth it? All she had to do was delete the clip, walk away, let it go. But her gut screamed no. Because if she stayed silent, it wouldn't just happen to her. Jasmine called a private meeting. Just 4 people she trusted. No staff, no press, phones off. Her best friend Darnell sat across from her, eyes locked on hers. "If you air that clip, they're going to hit you with everything. They'll call you angry, unstable, too emotional to lead. You know that, right?" "I've been called worse," she replied. "Yeah," he said, "but never when the whole country's watching." She looked out the window. The sun was setting over the Capitol dome, casting long shadows. "It's not about me anymore," she said. "It's about the people who believe in me, who believe in truth, even when it's hard." Then she played the clip for them. J.D. Vance. Laughing, mocking. Darnell didn't speak for a long time after it ended. Then he looked at her and said, "You're going to break the internet with this." She smiled, faint but fierce. "No," she said. "I'm going to break his mask." The next morning, Jasmine opened her inbox and stopped cold. A new article. Exclusive. Jasmine Crockett's Radical College Years. What She Doesn't Want You to Know. It was full of half-truths and doctored photos. A campus protest she helped lead was twisted into claims of violence. Anonymous quotes painted her as angry, irrational, and obsessed with race. She recognized the fingerprints. This wasn't journalism. This was political warfare. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from colleagues, reporters demanding comment. One even asked if she had ever been formally treated for emotional instability. She stared at the screen, hands shaking, not from fear, but rage. They were trying to destroy her. Not because she lied, but because she didn't. She called Darnell. "They're escalating," she said, voice flat. "They're trying to make me doubt myself." "Then don't let them win," he said. "Release the clip. Tonight." She was quiet for a long time. Then, almost in a whisper, "Not tonight. I have a better idea." Jasmine stood backstage under bright lights, mic being clipped to her blazer, hair being adjusted for the cameras. It was the night of the nationally televised policy panel, broadcast in all 50 states, with millions watching live. J.D. Vance had requested her as his opposing voice, a calculated move. He wanted a soundbite he could twist. He had no idea she'd come armed with truth. The producers had offered to brief her on the panel format. She declined. "I don't need coaching," she said calmly. "Just give me the facts. The rest will speak for itself." As she waited to go on stage, Darnell sent her one final text. "You ready?" She stared at the blinking lights, the cheering audience beyond the curtain, and thought of every name they'd called her. Then she typed back, "I was born ready." The host's voice echoed through the speakers. "Please welcome Representative Jasmine Crockett and Senator J.D. Vance." She stepped into the light. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't angry. She was certain. The panel was halfway through. when J.D. Vance leaned forward in his chair, voice loud and smug. "I respect the Congresswoman's passion," he said, smirking. "But we're here to talk about policy, not feelings. America needs leaders, not emotion-driven theatrics." Polite laughter from a few in the audience. He didn't stop. "You can't legislate with tears and slogans. You need logic. You need intellect. That's what separates people like me from people like her." Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't move. She just let the silence settle like dust over broken glass. The moderator looked ready to move on, but then she spoke. "Before we continue," she said, calm as still water, "I'd like the crew to play one short clip. It's relevant." J.D. Vance laughed, until the screen behind them flickered to life. His own voice filled the room. Hidden footage, a donor dinner, a private mockery. They eat that working-class garbage up. Just smile, say you care about their kids, and you're golden. Gasps erupted. Cameras froze. Even the moderator's mouth dropped open. And Jasmine turned to him, with nothing but the truth in her eyes. J.D. Vance sat frozen, his lips slightly parted, eyes blinking fast. He tried to speak, but the clip still echoed in the stunned silence. "Say you care about their kids, and you're golden?" Jasmine didn't gloat. She didn't even turn her head fully toward him. She just leaned slightly forward and spoke into the mic. "So which version of you should America believe?" Her voice was steady, sharp as a blade, but soft like truth. No one in the room moved. No camera cut away. The moderator sat stunned, his cue cards forgotten. Jasmine continued calmly. "One version of you wants to save the working class. The other laughs at them behind closed doors. Which one is real? Because voters deserve to know." J.D.'s face twitched. He fumbled with his mic, then muttered, "That clip was taken out of context." But it was too late. The internet was already watching. By the time Jasmine left the studio and stepped into the hallway, her phone was already vibrating nonstop. Her name was trending in all caps on X. Roll the tape. J.D. exposed. Jasmine Crockett for president. Within minutes, the clip had over 12 million views. TikTok flooded with reactions. Veterans, teachers, truck drivers. People who once believed J.D.'s everyman mask, now feeling betrayed. One video went viral. A young mother, wiping tears as she watched the clip on her cracked iPhone. "He mocked people like my dad, like my husband. Thank you, Jasmine, for not backing down." Jasmine sat on a bench outside the studio, the wind rustling her curls. She should have felt victorious, but something else crept in, something heavier. A text popped up from Darnell. "They're going to come hard now. Watch your back." Because the truth is, exposing a lie doesn't just burn the mask. Sometimes it lights a fuse under the whole system. 2 nights later, Jasmine was home, curled up on her couch, still in her blazer. A knock came at her door. Her security detail was off duty. She peered through the peephole. It was her neighbor, Ms. Talley, 72, harmless. But when she opened the door, Ms. Talley looked shaken. I found this on your doorstep," she whispered. It was an envelope, no name, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper typed, "Drop the tape, or we drop everything else." No signature, just a photo. Her little niece walking home from school, alone. Jasmine's breath caught. Her legs gave out, and she sat down right there on the floor, paper in hand. This wasn't politics anymore. It was war. They weren't trying to silence her voice. They were trying to scare her soul. But even shaking, even afraid, Jasmine's fire didn't die. It turned to steel. Jasmine didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table holding the photo of her niece. Her hands trembled, but her mind burned with clarity. They wanted her afraid. They wanted her to disappear. She poured herself tea, not to calm her nerves, but to keep her hands busy while she thought. A storm was coming, and she had two choices: bow to it or walk into it with her head high. Her phone buzzed again, a message from a blocked number. Back down, final warning. She closed her eyes and whispered out loud, "If you come for my family, you'll find out why I ran for Congress in the first place." The next morning, she held a press conference. No press team, no podium, no spin. Just Jasmine, standing in front of a community center in Dallas, with kids playing in the background. "I've received threats. I've been called everything but human," she said. "But I will not be silenced, not when the truth is at stake." The crowd grew. Cameras rolled. But behind one of those cameras, someone wasn't there to report. They were there to finish what the threats had started. Later that night, Jasmine received a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something in her gut made her swipe right. The voice on the other end made her heart stop. "Jasmine, it's your father." Her throat closed. She hadn't heard from him in years. He left when she was 16. No explanation, no goodbye. And now, out of nowhere, he was calling. "I saw the clip," he said quietly. "They're going to bury you for it. You know that, right?" She didn't respond. "I know I haven't earned the right to give you advice," he said. "But I know what it means to go up against men who think they can't be touched. They won't fight fair." Jasmine closed her eyes. "Why now?" I saw you. On that stage. And I remembered your mom's eyes. You got her fire. Don't let them put it out." She didn't cry. But something deep inside her cracked open. He hadn't come to fix the past. But he reminded her who she came from. And who she was fighting for. That night, a package arrived at her apartment. No name. Just her address, written in shaky block letters. Inside, an old manila folder worn at the edges, a notepaper clip to the front. "I couldn't protect you back then, but maybe this will." Jasmine's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were records, real ones. Transcripts of meetings J.D. Vance had attended years before he ever ran for Senate. Notes on the donors who funded his rise. Emails, not just mocking voters, but outlining how to manipulate them using fear, race, and false economic promises. Her father had worked in finance. He'd known some of the men behind J.D.'s rise. And now he was giving her the ammunition they thought she'd never find. She stared at the folder. This wasn't a clip anymore. It was a fuse, and she had the match. Jasmine stood in front of the microphone once again. But this time, not in a studio or at a press event. This time, she was on the steps of the Capitol. No teleprompter, no spin. Just her, a folder in her hand, and thousands of people gathered in silence. She held up the documents her father had sent, evidence of donor manipulation, internal communications, and pre-scripted town halls designed to lie to the public. "These aren't just his words," she said, voice steady. "These are his plans." She looked straight into the cameras. He didn't just insult working-class Americans behind closed doors. He used them, laughed at them, sold their pain for power. The crowd stirred, some cried, some clenched fists. She held the folder up one last time before handing it to a federal ethics committee staffer on live TV. And in that moment, she didn't just break a man's career. She broke a cycle of silence. But behind the applause, a darker silence waited, because not everyone would let this go unpunished. The backlash came swift. Cable news screamed about overreach. Commentators spun conspiracy theories. Old skeletons were pulled from closets Jasmine didn't even know existed. An ethics complaint was filed against her. But she kept showing up, kept telling the truth. The folder's contents sparked a congressional review. Hearings began. Subpoenas were issued. Donors distanced themselves from J.D. Vance, now silent and absent from the Senate floor. Then one night, Jasmine received another envelope. Inside was a simple handwritten note. "You may have stopped him, but we're not done." No name, no return address, just like before. She stared at the paper, then slowly tore it in half. "I know," she whispered. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Not because she was safe, but because they were scared. Because she didn't just survive the fire, she became it. She sat in the chair opposite the host. Millions were watching. They asked the final question. "Congresswoman Crockett, after everything, what do you say to the people who still think you're just too emotional for politics?" She took a breath and smiled. "I am emotional," she said, "because I care. Because I've seen what injustice does to people who don't have microphones. And if being emotional means I fight harder for truth, for working families, for people no one else sees, then I'll wear that label with pride." A beat of silence, then applause. Not polite, not political, real, raw, loud. The kind of sound that said, "We see you." That night, the interview clip joined the first one, both going viral. Schools shared them in civics classes. Young girls wore T-shirts with her quote. And somewhere, in a small Dallas church, an older woman in the back row whispered, "She didn't just speak, she shook the table." If this story moved you, if it made you feel seen, heard, or simply reminded you that truth still matters, we ask you to do just one thing. Comment below what part hit you the hardest. Like this video if you believe courage like Jasmine's should never be silenced. Subscribe so you never miss another story that speaks truth to power. Because sometimes one voice can wake up a nation. And tonight, maybe that voice is yours.